my great friend Denai Guerrero always
Amazing.
says, go where the love is. My addendum to that is like, go where it feels good. If it's not harmful to yourself, I mean, because like there are a lot of things that feel good, honey, that are not good for us.
Hi everybody, my name is Katharine Quinn, and welcome to Game Changers, your backstage pass to the innovators transforming Broadway. Today I am here with my friend and Tony Award-winning designer and producer, Clint Ramos.
Hi,
Clint.
Catherine.
How you doing?
I'm all right. How are you? It's very cold today.
It is chilly. Should we talk about how we met?
Oh my God. Please, let's talk about
Let's do it, because we were about to do it before the show and I saved
Yes.
Okay, so we met 13 years ago?
Was it 13 years
Or like
ago?
12 years ago?
Oh my gosh.
Cabaret,
you were a
right?
baby. Yes.
I was a senior in college.
We were doing a production, an amazing production of Cabaret at the Dallas Theater Center. Kate Weatherhead played Sally Bowles.
Wade McCullum,
who is now in
Water for Elephants.
That's right. Played the MC.
It was unbelievable.
It was an amazing production, immersive in the round, everything.
Directed by Joel Farrell. And choreographed. Tracy Lee was in it, and
Yes.
Tracy and I have now done 2 Broadway shows together. Tracy was in Shucked, and Tracy is in The Great Gatsby on Broadway.
Isn't that amazing?
Which is nuts. We're both from Garland, Texas.
But you were kids.
Oh, I was 20 years old, or 21
Yes.
maybe.
And, you know.
And you costumed.
Yes, I costumed it, and you were very limber.
Well, we were Kit Kat girls. We had to be. It was the job. I was one of the 2 ladies. There's photos. I don't think I'll be sharing them. But your costumes were amazing.
I mean.
And that production was so
It was
great.
a special production.
I can't let it go. And it's been forever.
No, I love that production. I also just loved Kate and everybody.
Oh my God, Kate was incredible.
And Wade. Oh my God, Wade's abs.
He's just like a remarkable human in every possible way.
Right.
But I will never forget him eating just steamed chicken breast and broccoli out of mason jars.
I see. So that's not like, it didn't. Okay.
He worked so hard and continues to. His body is still insane.
Yeah, I mean, because I saw,
Water for Elephants.
Yeah,
he's incredible.
And, yeah. No,
he's incredible.
Yeah.
Chiseled Greek god.
Amazing.
He's amazing. And Kate just wrote the book for Devil Wears Prada in London.
Killing it.
Yeah,
killing it.
Yeah.
I love Kate.
Yeah.
She's just such a unicorn, I feel.
I think so too.
Even as an actor,
yeah,
I've always felt like Kate was so special. I did Heidi Chronicles with her.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
Where?
directed by Lee Silverman.
Here?
No, at the Guthrie.
Oh my God.
I think there's something really unique about just her presence, and just her personhood that I think is you can't duplicate that. So I love her. I love her quality. Yeah.
Ditto. I was in awe. That was not a conventional casting necessarily of Sally Bowles, and she was brilliant.
No, she's always brilliant. I think when you cast Kate, in anything, it's always non-conventional, but it's always like, holy, there's something really special happening with this character, with this actor, with this production. It's always very, because she's special. I think, again, like she's a unicorn.
She was also very, very gentle and generous with me as a 21-year-old doing one of my first professional shows.
Yes.
I was so green and so eager, and now I'm a jaded queen. And I haven't seen Kate in 12 years. I haven't seen her since then.
Yeah, I can't wait to see Devil Wears Prada.
Oh, I'm thrilled.
It's
doing really well in London right now.
Yes, you followed her show on YouTube, right?
Oh, Submissions Only?
Yes.
Obviously.
Obsessed.
Obviously, a super fan.
Yeah, no.
Super fan.
And she just did what she wanted to do. Like
Early.
Listen, I'm very, very happy.
Entrepreneurial.
And also just brilliant.
And an author.
Yeah.
She and Andrew wrote books.
Multi-hyphenate. I want to pick her brain about so many things.
Me too.
Now, because she's doing so many different things.
Yeah.
Which brings me to like basically what I've always told you, like how proud I am of you.
Oh, Clint.
Moving to New York City, carving your own path. I think it's really great. I admire people who, say no to what people think they should only be doing.
You're the loveliest and the best. I mean, talk about multi-hyphenates. Like
I mean,
costumes, sets, producing. What else do you do? Father.
Father.
Unbelievable. Husband.
Yes.
All the things.
Yes.
Okay, this podcast is about you, so thank you. You're the most generous and best, and we're going to talk about you now.
Okay.
I'm so excited.
All right, let's do it.
Okay, take me back to your beginnings. Did you always think you would pursue theater? When did it enter the conversation?
I come from a family of lawyers.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and, you know, like a long line of, like, politicians and, you know, I'm from the Philippines originally, and so that's kind of where I was raised. But there were artists in the family, many of whom I didn't meet because they were from past generations, right? Like, but there were always like these stories about artists in our families, and you know, there's this painter. I had a great grand uncle who was like a painter, and my grandfather's twin was a playwright. You know, but they also did other things. You know, they were either doctors and playwrights or whatever. Anyway, I never thought I would go into the theater, but my mother, who is she's a lawyer, but she's such a great aesthete and kind of really exposed us to the arts. Like, she brought us to shows, she's brought to museums. In the Philippines, and you know. And
where in the Philippines?
Cebu, which is an island in the middle of the archipelago. It's where the Spaniards landed. In the 1500s. So I'd been always exposed to the arts, you know. I don't know, like a little queer child would be looking up to...
Was musical theater part of...
Oh, no, honey. I didn't even know what that was, to be honest. But I grew up, you know, in the 80s, you know, towards the end of the Marcos dictatorship. When I graduated elementary school, then First Lady Imelda Marcos and had this program where she would test all of these elementary school kids all over the country. And she would test them for aptitude in different fields, like humanities, you know, arts, the natural sciences, social sciences, all of that. And the top testers of each province would get a free scholarship to a boarding school that she started in the capital, or in different, you know, in different places in the capital. And so there were like these really amazing schools with amazing professors. A lot of them were foreign. It would be a boarding school for 4 years, free ride, but you would be almost sequestered from your family.
Is this college?
No, this is high school.
Wow.
Yeah, so you're like a kid at like 11, right? Because we finished like elementary school at 11. I tested really well.
And everything, I'm sure.
But I didn't test well in the arts. I tested well in the sciences and the natural. So I went to a science high school. And I was miserable. Super miserable. Because I was also just like, you know, I was this chubby, queer kid. You know, and I don't know if people know, but when you're like overweight and you're queer, you're already like a minority in your own family.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yes, you're othered anyway.
Right. And so I go, my mother, you know, and I was the eldest of 4 children. My mother was like, oh, this will be good because you'll be an example to your, you know, siblings and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so I get dropped off in Manila, and I was miserable. But then I saw these like kind of like theater kids, right? And there was a drama, you know, a drama club. And I would just kind of peripherally like not even hang out, just like kind of like stalk them, you know. So I would go to like the drama room that they were rehearsing, and I would go there before the club would assemble, and I would just kind of like sit, and they would drive me out because they would have to rehearse, and then I'd just like be outside. Or at the end of their thing, I would go in. The drama teacher noticed me and said, hey, you seem like you're like interested. I was a freshman in high school, 11 or 12, something like that. And I said, yeah. And you know, I started with like putting chairs back together and, you know, all of that. And he said, well, eventually he said, you know, we're doing this thing called, we called it street theater. And remember, it was a very politically tumultuous time in the Philippines, right? And what these were pop-up performances. And they would be 10 to 12 minutes, right? And they would be extracurricular, because you would be embedded with, I would say, like professional theater companies, you know, or not-for-profit theater companies, or a group of actors. What they would do was perform these 10 or 12-minute allegorical pieces during, like, in the town squares or in the business centers, and they're really like an affront to the dictatorship. And they were like plots that were just like really thin, like, oh, there's a vampire husband and wife draining and sucking the blood of the people. Like,
wonder what
like
it could
that.
be about.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, and there would be like effigies and masks and all that. And they were that short because by the 10-minute or 11-minute mark, the riot police would already come and disperse you with water cannons.
This is wild.
Water cannons. It was wild. That was my first introduction to like performance. My job was to hold this bamboo pole with a red flag, and everybody knew that the performance was going to happen there. That was my job. Right?
Wow.
But it was, to me, not only did I like find my community, you know, the Isle of Misfit Toys, as we always say, but I saw the real power of what performance can do. Right, that it was, people were thinking and people were moved, and it was really a vehicle for change. And in my experience, right, because the revolution happened quickly after that, like that contributed to the general zeitgeist of the revolution, and so I have high expectations of theater. Right, and so so I majored in theater when I went to college.
In the Philippines?
In the
here?
Philippines,
okay.
Right? And then I moved here for grad school, you know, and I got a scholarship at NYU, and I just stayed, you know, and that sort of like ambition and that kind of vision and expectation of what theater should be and ought to be has not wavered. You know, that's always kind of there.
I grew up going to see Annie in...
No, but girl, like, I saw touring productions of Oliver and all of that kind of stuff. I loved it.
Yeah, but your first experience as a child was art as activism, like working in theater.
Well, yes, art as a catalyst for change, really,
Wild.
You know, and community.
Yeah.
And that to me was, you know, I love that, and I don't regret any of that. I love that was my entry.
That's amazing. Okay, so you went to NYU in what year?
In the 90s.
Great. In the 90s.
In the late 90s.
And what was that like? I mean, I moved to the city in 2014. So what is New York City in the 90s?
New York City was, okay, so imagine me, like 18, 19, moving to the city, queer, you know.
When did you come out?
I didn't come out. Okay, that's a girl.
We don't have time.
Yeah.
But like...
I mean, I was out to everybody except for my family.
Okay.
Right? And my mother kind of dragged me out of the closet.
But
interesting. That's another story.
Oh my God, I can't wait.
Dinner.
Part 2.
No, what was it like? New York City was unbelievable. We're on Avenue B right now. Nobody came to Avenue B, right? Like there was almost like a force field, like on First Avenue. And our campus was like on 7th Street and Broadway. And
what was had the Disneyfication of Times Square happened?
It was just beginning.
Huh.
It was just
because Lion King was 97.
Mm-hmm. It was just beginning. But you know, the cocktails have not come out yet, you know, all of that kind of stuff. And you know, so it was a really alive time, right? But also I was young, so I have a different vision of like what that was, right? I loved, you know, the downtown drag performances. You know, I had like an odd job because, you know, I had to make money. I did odd jobs at La Mama for Ellen Stewart. Like I would sweep floors or like, you know, do her mail, and I looked up to her. Like I thought she was this really amazing kind of like, you know what I mean? Like it was just, I was so into the downtown scene, and also so much in like learning everything that I could possibly learn at NYU, right? I found, you know, my niche, and I just kind of like stayed there. And
your MFA was in
design.
Okay.
Yeah, when I first started out, I wanted to be a director. But then design kind of made more sense, at least for me, where like I've found some sort of like, oh, I can actually do this, right? The directing part was hard for me, at least when I was younger, because I didn't feel like I had that thing where I could actually work with you know, there's a certain kind of like personality and something where you're able to actually work with actors in a way that's kind of open, and I just didn't have that.
You need a filter. You need many filters to be a director, I think, to work with actors.
Yes, but also you need that kind of thing, right? And for some reason I didn't think I wasn't that kind of people person. You know, I'm very social. I like chatting and everything, but I think a large part of my personality needs to be alone. So I think design gave me that, right? And also I was so into design. Even when I was directing, I was so into design. I just like, and to me, creating the world and what the inhabitants of that world looked like made sense. And there was also like a lot of insular time where I could just be in my studio, really dreaming and kind of being obsessed about something. And then there are things that are just really outward when I'm in fittings or presentations and all that kind of stuff. But, I think to me it made sense that way until it didn't.
What is the gap between you're at NYU, you're studying, you're sweeping floors, you're doing odd jobs, you're doing all the things, to getting your first job properly working in theater?
Well, it wasn't actually a big gap.
That's great.
So when I was at NYU, there was a director named George Wolfe who ran the public theater. And he came to NYU. He and I think he had like producers Bonnie Metzger and Nick Schwartzhall. They came to NYU to see the designs.
Smart.
And they saw my work, and they invited me to do a show at the public.
That's crazy.
And I did my show. My first show at the public, I was still in grad school. It was called Santa Concepcion. It was
Costume, set, both?
I did both.
Wow.
For that. I did both for that. And then that quick, after grad school, what happened, they hired me to do this play by Jose Rivera called, this is a mouthful, it's called References to Salvador Dali Make Me Hot, with Rosie Perez and John Ortiz. Oh, okay. My God. That started my relationship with the public, and I think to count, I've done 28 shows there.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Between all of the venues, the 5 venues at the public and the park.
So that's late 90s.
That was late 90s. Yeah, into the 2000s, into Y2K.
Y2K,
Yes.
9/11. You were here.
I was here 9/11. I was waiting on tables. I was downtown. I was at the Odeon. I was waiting tables at the Odeon when it happened.
Wild. You do both. You do costumes and you do set design.
I do.
And that feels European to me, because I feel like the Brits do that a lot still. But I feel like once you get on Broadway, oftentimes there is a costume designer and a scenic designer. And I don't know that many designers in the city who consistently do both the way that you do.
Yeah.
Is that right-ish?
One of my dearest friends, David Zinn, does both. Yes, and a lot of people say, oh, it's so European, but it's really, to me, it isn't. I mean, the Europeans do it because it made sense, right? And I think...
because they're right.
But it's done in Asia, too, I understand. I think part of the desire to kind of divvy up the jobs is also... clearly it's part of the Industrial Revolution, right? But like it spreads love, in terms of labor.
Yeah.
Right. And in a highly unionized city like New York, I think that makes sense. I like doing both when it has good support, I could never stay in my lane. That's my, that's kind of the thing, And
because you're a producer.
And all of the designers I work with, know that. And to a certain extent, I work really well with designers who don't stay in their lanes, and directors. And there's a freedom of thought. There's a freedom of creativity, and it enables you to still have one foot in the big picture thinking.
When a project comes to you, are you often approached with specifically one or the other?
Yes, or very seldom both.
Are you ever sad that you've been asked to do one thing and you're like, wait, but I really wish I were doing the other?
It depends.
Yeah.
I mean, there were moments where I'm like, I'm not going to do that. Yeah.
You can say no.
Yeah. I'm again, that's a privilege.
Yeah.
Okay. If I don't feel the vibe of like whoever's working, I gently say no. When I was starting out, I would just take whatever I needed to take. And there wasn't a lot. Right. And most of the shows that I did, almost all of the shows I did, in the early 2000s, coming out of grad school, really shows of color, right? Nobody would hire me to do Shakespeare. Nobody would hire me to do a new play by some young playwright. There weren't a lot of Asian plays too, let alone Filipino plays then, there was David Henry Huang and Xie Yu, who kind of like were really the playwrights at that time. So I did a lot of shows by Black playwrights and Black directors. And to a certain extent, to a large extent, actually, I owe Black folk my career, starting with George Wolfe, because they, not for anything, but they saw my work and they saw what I could do, and they said, "Hey, come here, play here," right? No, I mean, I did Latinx shows too and all that kind of stuff.
But there wasn't a need to pigeonhole you. They did not feel a need to pigeonhole you.
They didn't.
Yeah.
They didn't. And so a lot of my friends and early colleagues and really dear, dear friends came from that community early on. My first show on Broadway, I was the only person of color.
Can we talk about your Broadway debut?
Yeah.
What was it?
Elephant Man on Broadway.
Do you know what year?
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Ish. Give me a decade. Violet in 2014, Elephant Man 2014-2015, and Eclipsed 2016.
Yes.
And then in Transit 2016-2017. And then it's just like your resume is stacked.
On Broadway, yeah. But I've been doing, like, listen, over my career, I've designed 250 shows.
Oh my God.
You know, and I designed a lot of shows in the regions. Dallas Theater Center was also a home because that's what we needed to do. We needed to string at least 15, 20 shows to make a living.
How do you stay creatively inspired after 250 shows?
Now?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know, honey.
Travel? I mean, we'll get to your feelings about the industry.
No.
Shortly,
How do I get creatively inspired? It really is like, I mean, you just get kind of like, yeah, I follow my id. You know, I mean, that's always been kind of my thing. It's like, do what feels good.
Yeah.
Denai Guerrera.
Okay.
My great friend Denai Guerrera always says, go where the love is.
Ooh.
Yeah. So my addendum to that is like, go where it feels good, right? If it's not harmful, because there were moments harmful to yourself, I mean, because like there are a lot of things that feel good, honey, that are not good for us.
Also a dinner conversation,
right? Yes.
Probably.
But you know what I mean?
Yeah, of
like,
course.
I'm very, very fortunate and very lucky that people really believed in me. You know, George was one of them. Jeanine Tesori was one of them. I was doing a production with Lear de Besonnet, who also is a dear friend and an early collaborator. I met Lear when she just first moved to New York.
Oh my God.
She's younger than me.
Oh my God.
And we did all of these crazy shows like at PS 122.
Oh my God.
Yes, honey. What did we do? We did St. Joan of the Stockyards.
Wow.
I mean, Lear is again very much like of the same kind of mind that theater should do something, right? And so she's been obsessed with the Federal Theater Project,
Public Works.
The Public Works,
Yeah.
you know. But that comes from that wasn't like that. She moved to New York City and she knew what she wanted to do. But so we did this Brecht, and she loves Brecht, right? So we did this St. Joan of the Stockyards. I could tell you a story about everything, but like those are the folks that really believed in me, and I loved working with them because you know, we were of the same kind of like wavelength and mindset. But Jeanine saw Lear's production of Good Person of Szechuan, which I was at La Mama. It was produced by the Foundry Theater, which is, I think, no longer here with us, and then it moved to the public. She saw it. She invited me to be one of the principal designers for Encores Off Center.
Huh.
That was the off-Broadway version. I had never been invited to Encores regular. Even when I was doing shows on Broadway, I would never be considered.
Wild.
And it's not like I didn't write letters, honey. You know. But Jeanine said, okay, we're doing this off-Broadway series in the summer. You, Danielle Worley, you know, Tony Award-winning Danielle Worley, and Mark Barton, amazing lighting designer, and Leon Rothenberg, Tony nominated, all these amazing designers. We want you to be the principal designers for the series. And so that started my relationship with City Center.
Do you know about what year that was?
2010, 2011.
Great, yeah.
Somewhere around there.
Yeah.
You know.
When we worked together. We worked together 2011.
Yes. But that was great because we were doing like encore style shows, smaller orchestra because it was off Broadway shows. But it, you know, and I fell in love with City Center. I fell in love with what it's supposed to be. You know, the cultural center of New York City, really.
So we're in City Center land. You've had an evolution there, though.
Yeah.
So how did that happen?
Right before the pandemic.
Yeah.
Off Center, we had done 7 seasons, all 3 of us, all 4 of us,
that's
Danielle,
amazing.
Leon, me, and Mark. And Danielle always says, yo, what's our exit plan? And I actually didn't, I thought she was just talking about off-center. I didn't think she was thinking about the theater, because now Danielle does, she does theater still, but her focus is actually, she's an amazing landscape and garden designer.
Wow, cool.
She spends most of her time outdoors.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah. And this was when, we all started kind of like, really like noticing, we were getting old and we were noticing more things on Broadway.
When you say noticing things on Broadway, what does that mean?
Just the way things work on Broadway.
Yeah.
And I think we were also starting to get more pragmatic in our life choices.
Yeah.
At that point, I think this was around 2017, 2018. We had done 7 seasons already, and that's like 28 shows.
That's crazy.
We designed 28 shows, and I did a gala for Encores.
Okay.
I did, because Jeanine was producing it.
Great.
That was Sunday in the Park with George, that moved to Broadway with Jake and Anna Lee. And I'd never really thought of anything before that. And then Lear got the artistic directorship of it. Quickly after she called me and she said, hey, I'm actually thinking of a shared leadership model. I'm thinking Jenny Gersten and you. And I said, what do you want me to do? And she's like, what do you want to do? And I said, well, I want to produce, and I also want to creative direct.
Had you done either before?
To a certain extent, because I do sets and costumes,
right.
I'm a creative director
Always.
Already,
yeah.
right? And that's how I relate with directors. And,
but producing in earnest, not really yet.
No. And she said, great. Let's do it. And so to a certain extent, I learned so much from those two ladies, particularly around producing with Jenny Gersten. Who better else to teach you,
yeah,
right, than Jenny Gersten, who was like producing when she came out of the womb. And that kind of like started the producing thing. But, producing in a not-for-profit is different than producing on Broadway.
That leadership change happened just before the pandemic.
Yeah,
okay.
2019, 2020.
Yeah.
And so during the pandemic, we were doing like our digital premiere series.
Zoom.
Yes. And we put
theater.
out content, it was that. And then we started our first. I can't even believe that was like 5 years ago.
Right?
Right. It was 5 years ago when we started Encores.
That's
we didn't start
nuts.
Encores when we started our leadership.
It's been a rocket ship since then. It has.
That's what they say.
It's true. It's true. Anyone who's been here during that time, anyone who hasn't been here during that time knows.
I'm very proud of what
you
we've
should
done.
be. It's amazing.
It's one of our proudest kind of like moments. We have brought in the last 5 years, creatively, more new people to City Center than the previous years combined.
Wow.
There were a lot of people who, for many reasons, a lot of it probably unknown to me, just didn't do Encores or were not
invited, perhaps.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know, but also I understand why that would be, because like it's a fast process.
Yeah.
And you need a shorthand, and you need a shorthand with people who have done it, right? But I think there's also there's a price for that. And so when we came in, around 50% of our subscribers, our subscriptions and our subscribers were gone.
Wow.
Like any other after COVID, right?
That's just crazy.
Either they aged out or they didn't come back after. That was a big task, aside from like putting up a season, and really looking at what the mission, what should be the mission for Encores, what the next phase for it would be, and we're back to 100%, and a large part of a big percentage of the new subscribers are under 40.
That's incredible. Yeah. In such a short period of time.
Well, 5 years,
That's a short period of time, especially like in Broadway years. That's a blink. That's nothing.
It's true.
That's amazing.
It's true.
Can we please get Thoroughly Modern Millie that we were promised with Ashley Park? How do we make this happen? That was a 2019 baby that I'm just devastated about. Is this for the car right after? Great.
There are projects that are just beyond my control.
Yeah.
Or anybody there right now who's,
it doesn't have to be Ashley Park. I would love that, but like.
No, Ashley Park as Millie.
It would be unbelievable.
Ashley Park as Millie is literally I think that would be the equivalent of like,
Cynthia as Elphaba.
Or even launching a rocket ship to Pluto. Ashley Parker, perfect.
Yes.
It's just perfect.
Yes.
Yeah.
Powers that be, make it happen.
And Ashley is probably one of the most gifted performers I've ever worked with, and an ebullient human being. Like, when you meet Ashley and you're just like, oh my God, like you were wide awake when God sprinkled life. Because like Ashley is alive.
Oh, I love that.
You know what I mean?
I love that. I didn't mean that she shouldn't be a part of it. I was just like, maybe she's too fancy. I don't know. She's busy and important.
Maybe.
That's really the only concern.
But Ashley's a theater kid.
I know. She's a girly.
Like I'm sure.
She'd come
sure
back home.
If the schedule is right, like she would probably do it.
Okay, we're circling back to Eclipsed, which was your Tony win.
Oh my God, yes, Eclipsed.
How did this happen? We'll start with how did this project happen and what your experience was, because then I have a little follow-up question.
Oh, okay. So Eclipsed happened because the play actually had been kind of like been developed by Liesl Tommy and Denai Guerrera.
Who you've worked with a lot, right, as well?
I did. Yeah. I saw a McCarter version of it after a workshop and, all of that. And they decided, we're going to take it to the public. The public decided that they were going to do it. And it's going to have Lupita. And Lupita had just won the Oscar for 12 Years a Slave.
Okay.
Yes. But Lupita had done the show, actually understudied the show when she was a student at Yale Drama School.
Whoa.
When they did it at Yale. So Lupita was like, I know the play, I love the play, I'll do it. And that's kind of like how it happened.
That's amazing.
It happened in the public, and then we went to Broadway. Many things happened in there, but like it was a stacked cast, with like Sekon Sengblo, the first Black Elphaba. Can we talk about Sekon Sengblo?
I would love
who
to.
we lost to television.
Oh
Sekon,
my God.
come back.
Oh my God. I saw her in Hair.
And Fela.
Oh my God. And Fela. That woman. She's amazing. She is also a God sprinkled human. She is like a luminous light bulb.
No, she is everything. And then Zainab Jah.
Oh my God. I did not see it and I'm very sad. But I bet it's probably at the library, right?
Oh, it is at the library. And then Pascal Armand,
I need to.
And Akosia Busia, who played Nellie in the Color Purple movie.
Oh my God.
With Whoopi.
Oh my God.
Yes. That happened, and then it went to Broadway, and then, it was kind of like, that was my first nomination,
And win.
And it was my third Broadway show, and yes, my only win. But
so far. What does a Tony feel like? What did it mean? What did
it was
feel
such a blur.
And has your
it was bananas.
relationship to it changed since then? Like whatever that means.
Yeah. At that time, well, the award ceremony itself was a blur. Like
blacked out.
Literally, you get on that stage, and the first face I saw was Oprah, and then Jessica Lange, and any sort of like whatever ability to speak just like went away.
Theater has been my savior in the darkest of times in my life.
It really meant that like that folks in the industry like the work.
Yeah.
It meant also that works like design work like what we did on Eclipsed, which is not pretty.
And not like some extravagant device, conceptual.
Correct. That was like really rooted in this kind of photorealism.
Yeah.
Brutal.
Yeah.
Almost brutal, but like all of it is photorealistic. A lot of the costumes that were based on real people, because these were real women.
Right.
It was a very, very protracted war. It had, the Civil War like went into phases in Liberia, but it also meant that people were paying attention to design, not as a thing of just aesthetics, but actually, at least that's what it meant to me, and also being the first person of color to win that award, win that category, meant a lot to a lot of people. I know this because I've heard from them.
I'm sure.
So it was very loaded, but there's also like a lot of like craziness around being the first, all of that kind of stuff. Which, why did it take that long? But then it also kind of like, it felt like people, that people would listen.
Have you found that to be true? Did it mark any sort of change in how you think the industry has seen you or treated you or respected or invited you into conversations since that happened?
Yes.
Wild.
I'm just going to be honest.
Yeah,
yes.
you know, that's what I
mean?
wanted.
Yes,
of course.
It is in a lot of ways, it opens up, that kind of like door, which you could, deploy in many ways.
I just think that's so interesting because I think there's a perception, or at least I held the perception before I was working on Broadway and in the industry, that once you're on Broadway, or once you're working in the Broadway community, that you automatically feel a part of it. And what I continue to experience speaking with people that I really admire, who've been working on Broadway much longer than I have, is they're still fighting to feel respected, included, part of the conversation. It's like we're still kind of kids in the schoolyard, which I don't know if that's like a taboo thing to say out loud. The Tony Awards, it does mean something, even internally in the community, not just to like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, for me, it's complicated, right, the Tony Awards, because it's, unlike any other award, I think it's really, the Academy Awards, for instance, right, that's voted by the Academy. So, and which is composed of all the professionals working in the film industry, right? And they're divided into groups, right? Like there's the directors, the actors,
designers,
designers, producers, and they vote in their category, right? And they nominate in their category. The Tonys is different because half of the nominating committee are appointed by the American Theater Wing, right? Which is a not-for-profit. Right, and half of it is appointed by the Broadway League, which is the group that basically is, represents producers, general managers, presenters. There already are different interests.
Yes.
Coming in there, right? Some of them, are actually parallel, and some of them are perpendicular, right? And so, to me, that gives it a unique kind of like, for us, we have to think of it that way because it is commercial theater. I am hoping that nominators and voters, and also the voter pool, is also divided that way.
Yeah.
Right? And so I'm hoping that artistic merit and excellence is the prevailing ethos for people who nominate and vote.
The world of Tony campaigns was foreign to me until I was dating a producer during the pandemic, and I was like, what are these parties and these gift baskets and these, it was just like, it blew my mind that it's a political machine.
Yeah, like any awards, like
right,
because, like,
right. But I was so naive. I was just it's whoever's best, which sometimes is true,
right?
And sometimes it can be political to an
extent.
I mean,
like the Oscars too,
yes, of
right?
course.
Like, but I also feel like I think part of that is like really reminding people, reminding folks of the presence of that show or this particular performance or anything like that.
And we need it desperately.
And it is a campaign.
Yeah.
There's no kind of doubt about that. It's not like the Nobel Prize.
Yeah.
Or the Pulitzer where you can,
Yeah. And yet it's incredible.
And I'm sure there are still like low-key campaigns.
Oh, I'm sure there are.
Can somebody please from the Nobel Prize just like tell me if
give us a tip?
Are there really like campaigns? I want to know.
There probably are.
Okay.
Yeah. So before we get to rapid fire, we have to talk about producing, which is like an endeavor of the last 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
What has that experience been like? You were at City Center, but you've also now produced on Broadway.
Yes.
Nonprofit commercial theater.
Yes.
What has your experience producing commercial theater been like in the post-shutdown years?
It's wild. Okay. First of all, I think my trajectory was different, right? Because like my first Broadway producing gig was literally as a lead producer of a $23 million show. Right. And so and I worked with like seasoned producers. 2 of the 5 of us, it was our first Broadway show, but the 3 of them had shows under their belt. So I learned a lot from them. Coming out of the pandemic, and we as members of this community always say, throw this kind of like, oh, Broadway is so broken kind of phrase, right? And to a certain extent, I believe that, right? But for me, part of why I wanted to do Here Lies Love was like, well, you know what? I actually want to see how broken it is. Let me get under the hood, because like, how am I gonna tell? Is it it's like, let's raise it down, burn it down, or is it a gut reno, or is it like, can we do a room by room kind of
touch
like,
up. Tweak.
right? Or can we do it room by room, right? So I don't, and I'm not gonna give you the answer to that because I'm still formulating the thing. But like, to me, that was a year of like really learning and observing how things move, and a lot of it didn't surprise me, didn't surprise me, and a lot of it actually surprised me, and so I think there's a lot of work to be done if we are gonna keep on saying that Broadway is the de facto national theater of the United States of America,
and theoretically the pinnacle of musical theater in the world.
Mm-hmm.
I want to be like, what do we need to fix, Clint? But there's like, how long do we have?
What don't we need to fix?
Yeah, and how politically, how diplomatic do we want to be?
I don't know if there's some really great people on Broadway.
Yeah.
A lot actually of really great people who really want great change and also want it to work, right? And there have been really significant changes, right? But Jocelyn Bio actually said this once when we were in a talk together, and she said it's like being on the Titanic or the big cruise ship, right, or something like that. Like, it's making a turn, but you can't feel it because it is so big, and the immensity of the machine is big, right? But it will require all of us, all of it, like all of us, the unions, producers, performers, creatives, theater owners, everybody, to move the needle, to keep on turning. It really does require everybody. And I think it requires everybody being open to new ways. Everybody. It can't just be, 4 out of 5. It has to be everybody. And I think that's the hard part there, because it is a free market, and all the complications of what a free market, particularly if you're dealing with a free market that peddles in art, right? So that's I think the where I am with it right now. But plus also, I think whoever wants to go into it, I think needs to really kind of be able to compartmentalize art and commerce in a way that makes sense.
Whoever wants to go into it, do you mean artists or do you mean producers?
Yeah.
And what does that
Or
mean?
even artists. Yes, even artists.
What does that mean, producers need to compartmentalize art and commerce in order to produce?
That Venn diagram intersection is very small.
Yeah. Of what? People who
Of
care
art and
about both,
commerce.
or
Of between art and commerce.
theoretically that's Broadway.
Right. But so to me, it means that you have to kind of right size and really, this is a personal thing. Define what your rubric of success is, right? Because there are great works of art on Broadway that are not commercial successes.
Yeah.
And there are commercial successes that may not be great works of art. But again, all of that is subjective, right?
Yep.
What's not subjective are the numbers. What is the metric of your success as a producer? That's kind of like what I keep on meditating on, right? Why do I want to produce? At Encores, at a city center, I produce because there are shows that I feel, and teams and visions, creative visions that I feel like must be seen, right? That's true with every show that I've led at Encores. From Piazza to Jealousy, even The Life, even Billy Porter's The Life, very controversial The Life, right? There are voices that that I listen to that voice and I just say, hey, this is an idea of this particular work, because we do revivals, right? That I think we must see now, because I think this will speak to the zeitgeist. However way. It can piss the zeitgeist off, but it can like really hit that sweet spot, right? But it will never put the zeitgeist to sleep.
Yeah. It will always say something.
It will always say something.
And spark a conversation.
Spark many conversations and ideas, and really open up new possibilities for things that we've written off.
Obsessed. Yeah. Okay. On that note, rapid fire. Favorite Broadway show?
That I worked on?
Sure.
Once on this Island.
It was so good.
Yeah, that was special. Michael Arden and Dane Laffrey and those actors, were amazing. I mean, that would probably be a tie with Sunday in the Park. But yeah.
That's
the
amazing.
Musical.
Moment you knew you've made it.
I don't know. I don't know if I've. To be honest, I don't know if I've met that moment yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's totally fair. Dream collaborator that you have not worked with yet?
I've worked with a lot of really amazing people. One of my dreams was to work with Ez Devlin, and I'm working with her right now. But it would probably be like working with, like, I don't know, Romeo Castellucci or Ariane Minushkin, these kind of really, out there European auteurs.
Proudest moment besides winning your Tony?
Being a father.
Do you have a favorite theater space or Broadway theater?
I do. I love the Golden.
Wow,
Yeah.
Hot take.
Yeah, I love the Golden.
I love that.
It's a weird backstage situation.
Yeah.
But I've done Eclipsed there. I did Slave Play there. That's a favorite too. It is one of the smaller theaters, but there's something that feels really special about it.
Filipino dish that's your favorite?
Oh my God. There's a Filipino dish that I think this will gross people out, but it's literally made out of like chicken liver and gizzards, and it's called it's a version of adobo, which is our national dish, but it's the protein is purely that.
That sounds delicious.
It's so
Wait, what's
good.
it called? Did you say it?
It's like adobong atay at balon-balunan, which is the mouthful. Yeah.
Great. Sign me up. Next place you want to work?
China.
Musical theater?
Any theater.
What are you looking forward to?
I'm looking forward to the next chapter of us as theater makers. I really am. Before I die, I kind of want to see what that looks like.
Clint, you're the best.
No, Katharine, you're the best.
Get out of here. Thank you for doing this.
Oh my God, what a pleasure.
Thank you for chatting. Thank you for being candid. And thanks for allowing me to not remember what years certain plays were that you worked on. And you're a star. Or even what year we worked together. I don't know.
Oh my God, what year was that?
It was 2011.
Oh, okay.
It was 2011.
And again, I continue to be very proud of you.
You're the best.
You're the best.
Thanks to our incredible guests for sharing their time and wisdom with us, to Tao Group and our gorgeous venue, The Highlight Room in New York City, and to you for joining us at And That's Showbiz. We have a lot more where this came from, so don't forget to subscribe, let us know what you thought, and what guests you want to see next in the comments, and we'll see you in the next one.